Someone once told me that being hyper-focused on churn is like leaving your own party where people are having fun to chase after people who weren't having fun.
Such a great metaphor.
It's so good. Everyone's like, oh, you need to focus on churn and try to fix churn, but not all churn is fixable. We needed to focus on finding customers who look like our biggest fans, especially in the beginning. Like there's so many more customers that could sign up that are going to love us that we didn't need to fix churn yet, right? And at the time, we just had to accept that churned users didn't see our value. Welcome to ProfitLed Season 2, our Journey to a Million, episode 26. This is our second last episode. My name is Melissa Kwan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of eWebinar and your host. And I'm here with my co-host, Todd Parmley, eWebinar's COO. Hey, Todd, how's it going?
I'm good. I think 26 episodes is how many episodes a sitcom has to have, like in a season, or it used to be. It probably is not the same anymore now that everything streams, but yeah, it used to be 26. So we can franchise now, is what I'm saying.
I mean, it seems like forever. We've been recording this for a year.
That's true. Yeah.
So Happy New Year. This is our first recording in 2025. How did you spend your New Year's?
Well, we had friends over and we made a French banquet. We had beef bourguignon, pot de crème. Yeah, it was delicious. It was mellow. There were like 10 of us here, and yeah, we had a great time. Very mellow. What'd you do?
Well, we were in Thailand, as we always spend like a month or two in Thailand during the winter. And actually, we were supposed to go somewhere else for New Year's Eve. And in the end, we were just so tired and we couldn't leave Thailand, also because it was just amazing. And we ended up going to an island called Koh Phangan for Christmas and New Year, had a nice little group there. And for anyone who's been there, it's like a very, very tiny island with like a few roads and everyone motorbikes. I don't motorbike, but there's also like an east side of the island where you can only get to by boat. And that part has like almost no vehicles. Like you can get there by boat or you can off-road for an hour. Yeah, which we did when it was raining. But we discovered this east side of Koh Phangan, which is like a magical part of the world. And so we went there and we just didn't leave for a week and just chilled. And there were like small parties here and there. But it's just an incredible place. So I would highly recommend that. Actually, when we were leaving, so I have a funny story. So there was a New Year's Eve party there. And my friend met this guy who's like, in his 50s or maybe 60s. I don't know. He's like a big partier. And he was like, oh yeah, I've been doing this, New Year's in Koh Phangan for 25 years. This is the schedule for over the next few days. And my friend was telling me the story and he was like, it's kind of sad to be like spending 25 years in the same place. Like that's not a flex, right? So we laughed about that. And then when we were leaving the island, we already booked a week New Year's for next year. Yeah. So I was like, I think this is where it starts. So in the last episode, we talked about what lifestyle business means to us and how what we're building at eWebinar brings everyone on our team closer to that. And today, we're going to talk about the 9 most important PLG lessons learned, so product-led growth lessons learned, which is a topic that's based on a viral LinkedIn post that I had, which I'll share in the show notes. The thing is, when we started eWebinar, we had no idea it was going to be product-led. Like I've always been a sales-led founder, and my first 2 startups were enterprise SaaS. And that word PLG, product-led, didn't even exist in my vocabulary until I ran out of ways to get leads about 9 months into eWebinar, which we talked about in the earlier episodes. And I had to ask other founders for help and Google how other companies were growing. And that's how I learned about product-led growth. And I guess you were also like not in that world, like not in the product-led world. And in many ways, you were also in sales-led companies and startups. So it's crazy now to think back in 2019, how we started a PLG company without knowing anything about PLG, and then just kind of like nudged it along for 36 months anyway to get to $1 million.
The product-led growth as a strategy for growing a company was entirely new to me. Some of the concepts around using the product itself as your primary, the source of your marketing, like that, what the product is, how the benefits it serves, that felt very familiar to me. But the idea of using it as a product grow, as a company growth strategy was entirely new to me.
Yeah, so I know that we kind of like brute forced our way through, which I think that's why we had so many important lessons that we learned along the way. Yeah, so let's just dive. And there's 9 of these. It's just a list, so let's just go through them and then maybe talk through them, like we've done in the past. So number 1 is, even if your company is product led, and I think a company can really be only product led if they're at a certain price point. So just a reminder that our product price point at the beginning started at $49, but now it's $99. So it's still a fairly low price point. Anything, I would say $10K or higher a year would naturally be sales led, because someone, a customer or prospect wants to talk to a real person. But even if your price point is low, I think founder led sales is still the only way to get a brand new company off the ground. Right? Because breaking into a new market with a new product as a new company, no credibility, is really a job that only founders can do. And only founders can convince people to give them a chance just through like enthusiasm and excitement. So even looking back, like even though like product led is how we ended up growing, like when founder led sales ran out, I don't think we would have been able to get this off the ground if I didn't speak to like our first 100 customers.
No, there's no way. And also it helped that while the company had no credibility yet, right? You did, having had, worked on a startup that was acquired, that was a beloved product by those who used it. And so, I think that for us, I mean, I think what you're saying is true, period. Right. You have to just pound the pavement until you can make your first sales as a founder. But I mean, it was a very obvious source of new customers for us, because you had, let me use a very old term, you had your Rolodex, which I don't even know if people know what a Rolodex is anymore.
Yeah, I actually never used one in my lifetime, but I think my parents
I never did either, but it still was that was the thing you called your Rolodex of contacts. But anyway, you had your contact list to draw on, and that was, those were our first customers. So,
well, I think in order to know how to create a product such that it can be product led, you need the feedback to make that product good enough. And in the beginning, like not only does a founder have to do that, because it's really the founder's vision and the founder's product, but there's no one else on the team, right? Especially if you're bootstrapped. So like who else would be doing this? So, like I think founder-led sales actually encompasses a lot. And a lot of that in the beginning is feedback. It's like, is my idea going to work? Do people actually buy into it? Are they using it for this use case? What's wrong with it, right? What are the assumptions that we made about the product that we need to change such that the product can sell itself?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think that's important to point out, that that's a part of founder-led sales, is that it's not only like acquiring new customers, but it's being in relationship with that new customer, so you understand what they need and can build the product accordingly. I think that those things are synonymous. And I agree with you that the founder has to do that. They cannot outsource that shit. They have to be firsthand.
I mean, I think it would be magical if you had a product that was so good already to begin with that everyone can just hide behind the internet and just like watch the sales come. I wish that were the case, but I really don't know another company that actually have been able to achieve that. So the second one is, what other people say about you will always trump what you say about you, right? So there are even studies that prove that people are less likely to buy from a company they see in an ad. And like case studies and reviews, testimonials, that is the new advertisement, right? Review sites or, whatnot, right? So, I remember in the beginning, I was always begging customers to record testimonials and then submit reviews. And then I would actually get on a call with them to get feedback about the product. But then I would ask them kind of in a way such that they become testimonials. And then I would ask them afterwards if I could cut it up or like make that interview into a case study. So I would like do these sneaky things like that.
Yeah, for those of you who are listening right now, like that's a very sneaky and a very great strategy.
I mean, everybody wants to have like a hand in the product, right? So they want to give you feedback. But if you're like, hey, can you get on the phone with me and tell me how great I am? Most likely not going to respond.
Yes. So that's like the carrot to get them to show up, right? Like, but nobody, people loved our product, but people are lazy. They don't want to have to think about writing a review. So like, it's a combination of, yes, getting them involved in a way that, that they want to be, right? They want to give feedback. They want to be a part of that process, but then making it like so easy for them that you basically say, this is what you said. Can I put this up as a review? And that's to me, that's the magic of that strategy.
Yeah. And the thing is this also is part of the feedback process, the feedback loop. But all these, and why this matters, right? Why this ties into PLG. Because I think when a lot of people think about product led, they only think about the product itself, like the software itself. But I really also tie like marketing led, customer led into the whole product led movement because your product is also your website. That's the first thing that people see. That is your storefront that communicates the product. And then people choose to sign up based on what is on your website. And those reviews and those case studies and those testimonials really matter a lot for people to understand your product so that they can come in and use the product. So then they could either refer to their friends or, do something such that someone else will sign up.
Yeah, it's sort of like with PLG, it's like this magic thing that happens where once they're in your product, they can experience the value of it quickly and they're just going to sign up and tell all their friends. They have to get over the barrier of signing up, right? So it is important to think of your website for sure as it's part of your product. It's the part of the whole customer acquisition kind of cycle.
Yeah, and all those reviews and testimonials that we get from customers, those are evergreen, right? We're still using them and we've improved our database of them so that they're all tagged, they're more searchable. But we are still using things from that, from like 4 years ago, I think, like some of our first testimonials, because they still apply.
Yeah, and actually a little plug for organizing them like that and making them searchable and categorizing them. It becomes a very powerful tool when you're writing content later because you can say, I want to offer social proof of what I'm saying is true, right? I'm going to tell you that our customers tell us that attendance doubles when they use our product, right? Well, I can actually back that up with several testimonials besides data to say that it's true, which I think is actually more convincing than data. Personally,
that is data. It's qualitative, right? And we even like if somebody submits a Capterra review or like writes something to us in a support inbox, like we will take some of those quotes and save them and then tag them for use later, whether it's like related to a chat feature or it's talking about, some analytics. Like we always save everything that is worth saving and so that we might use it later. So number 3 is something I had to learn over and over, which is you can't hire someone to take away your pain, right? So in the first 2 years, we tried numerous companies, like around 6 or 7 marketing companies that didn't work out, like digital marketing companies that didn't work out. And we didn't know marketing ourselves, so we couldn't define what success looked like. And we talked about this in an earlier episode as well. So in the end, because every single marketing company couldn't really deliver exactly what we wanted, but also because we didn't know what we wanted, we decided to learn it, like digital marketing, content, SEO, own it ourselves and own that strategy. So from that, we learned that you need a basic idea of how something works before hiring for the role. And like, again, why this is related to PLG is that PLG is not isolated to the product itself. It is also all the content around your product, how it helps people, all your use cases, like what you put in your blog. So PLG really, I think, still needs like marketing and content, right? So in some ways, I feel like it's still like marketing led. I really don't feel like any company is purely product led.
Well, sure, at least until maybe they get into the product, right? But you still have to get them to sign up. So, like, I would also add to that in your content, you have to talk about how you're differentiated in the marketplace, right? Which I think a lot of people are like kind of shy about for some strange reason, which is, what is it about your product versus other products in your category that makes you the best choice for people? And I think that's one of the most so there's one thing I want to add here, which is that one of the kind of, I don't know, conventional thought process around digital marketing is that kind of like eyeballs are enough, right? Eyeballs are enough, and we just want to drive traffic to your website. And when we talked about conversions to some of these companies, their eyes like glazed over. They were like, well, I don't know how we can measure conversions, or I don't know how we can drive conversions. I'm like, well, what's the point? Especially for a bootstrapped company who doesn't have some like massive marketing budget. And one of the big lessons that I learned is that we needed to kind of also trust our instincts which took us a while to figure out actually, because everybody was telling us the same thing, is that like something doesn't smell right here, right? For a company of our size with our goals, the most important thing is driving revenue. And that's what drove us to find who we've mentioned before as Grow and Convert, which really they focus on writing content for conversions, which for us was a big sort of mental breakthrough in understanding about what we wanted to our market, how we wanted to kind of craft our marketing. But we couldn't figure that out, and we couldn't measure, like you said, we couldn't measure success. We didn't know what we needed until we knew it for ourselves, and that took some time and wasting a lot of money. And maybe it's not wasted, right? Because we had to learn what we had to learn, but wasting a lot of money on companies that didn't work for us.
And so I guess that leads us kind of to the fourth thing that we learned is, and this is kind of directed mostly at like executives of the company or founders, is like being able to write engaging content is a differentiator. And that does link to marketing and demand gen as well. But nowadays, I think consumers really care about the makers behind the product and the mission behind the product that they invest in, right? I think we've already gone there for a lot of, you know, consumer products or even restaurants, right? People are going to farm to table. They want to know where their food is coming from, right? And that's really no different than software nowadays, right? That's why people spend so much time on LinkedIn, like myself, and I think, sharing authentic content that lets your audience connect with you as the person behind the company really makes the company human, right? And it's really a competitive advantage, but it needs to come from you, like whoever's writing. I know there's a lot of people that offer like ghostwriting services and things like that. And, I was kind of tempted in the beginning, before I actually wrote anything, because it seemed like something I could just get off my plate. But in the end, like people want to hear from you, right? And when I write on LinkedIn, a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey, I really connect with this. Or when a new customer signs up, they add me on LinkedIn and they send me a message and I respond, right? So it feels like, hey, if there's a problem, I can come to this person.
Yeah.
And even though it's a small startup, I know someone's going to take care of me.
And I would add to that, and as an extension of what you said, is that like you're the person who experienced the problem that drove you to conceive of this product. So you understand why it's better. You have a very direct, intimate knowledge of what drove you to build this product. So anyone who's experiencing the same problem will be like, oh my God, that's my problem. And that, like, when I think of what the opposite of engaging content is fluff content. And like so much of content out there is fluff content. And the only way to not write fluff content is to write engaging, authentic content, speaking from a place of authority about whatever problem you're trying to solve. And who better to do that than the founder?
Yeah. So number 5, which I also knew from my last company and the one before that, but I think nowadays is more it's more prevalent, is consumer expectations are completely out of whack, right? And why this matters is because having a product-led movement also means that you have to understand how your customers are using you, where you can entice them, or where they can recommend your products, things like that, right? How do you get them into the product so that they'll use it to, experience first value, like all those things. But we've reached a point, like, in society where someone will ask for a refund because, the color of a button is different. Or, it doesn't do exactly what they want it to do, but there's no other product on the market that does that. Right? Or like it doesn't, or you connect with Zapier, but not their specific, very niche CRM, so they can't use it. Right. And so I think every company, including ourselves, wants to be customer centric, but it has to be within reason. Otherwise, you get pulled in so many different directions, right? We can get one piece of feedback one day and get the complete opposite feedback the next day. And if we listen to everything, then I guess we're going to be nothing for anybody.
Yeah. Product-led growth means listening to the feedback of your customers, right, to make a better product. But you can't, if you listen to everybody, you're going to make a terrible product. You're going to make a terrible product. You're going to end up with a Frankenstein. So, the other thing is that expectations around technology now are that it's perfect and just always works. But that's
Yes.
because, we're all competing against these multi-billion-dollar companies where their product, always works. So,
I mean, does it though? Because I think the bigger the company, the more forgiving people are. And I actually think smaller companies, medium-sized companies, make more intentional software. And when big companies go down, somebody will just be like, oh, well, they're a big company. So if it goes down, then it's probably really bad. I remember like listening to this podcast where one of our competitors actually said that they're like a live webinar company, not like a direct competitor, but something about like they were like out for a few hours and the founder was getting like death threats. Like if Amazon goes out for a few hours, everyone's like, oh yeah, Amazon's just out. We'll just wait for it to come back on.
right. Yeah, maybe it's because there's nowhere to direct your rage. Like they do really, like big companies, like how do you even reach them, But with a small company, oof.
I know. And that brings me to a point that's completely unrelated, which is like, people don't sign up because we don't have phone support. And none of the big companies that we use every day, like Facebook and Instagram, I mean, same company, but you get my point, has phone support either. Like I have an email sitting right now in my inbox, which has one of the reasons why they don't sign up is because we don't have phone support. If I let them call me, they're going to ask me how to fix some other thing that's unrelated because I'm on the phone, which is actually what happened in my last company. I had phone support for like 2 weeks. I listed my own cell phone number on our website, and people were like calling and like asking, like they would ask the question they wanted to ask, but they'd be like, oh, now that you're on the phone, do you know how to fix this thing on Facebook? So I think like knowing how to choose, like knowing how to differentiate good feedback from just feedback that you're never going to implement is definitely a learned skill. But at the end of the day, you just have to be like very true to what you want to be, right? In the end, like we want to be the best interactive video automated webinar company out there. We are not trying to be a fake live webinar. We're not trying to mimic a live webinar. We're not trying to be live webinars.
Yeah, we're not trying to even compete with live webinars. We're a different thing.
I mean, every week somebody's like, well, I want to only have one software. So if you have live, then I'll just sign up for you. I'm like, well, I realize that, but it's a totally different business.
Yeah. It's hard for people to grasp that. We know that. That's one of our big challenges, right? But They're two completely different beasts.
So the sixth thing, which is a particularly painful thing that we have an episode about, is affiliates is not a go-to-market strategy. So we spent, again, $130,000 experimenting with affiliates and then attributed less than $500 a month in revenue. And so that's episode 16, where we dive into all the details. So what we learned from that is your product needs to be mature enough such that selling it is not hard. Like somebody has to look at it and be like, oh, I'm going to buy this because it needs to be in my stack. So affiliates can accelerate you, but they can't test the market for you. It's a growth strategy, not a go-to-market strategy. We were definitely way too early for that. So like we had all those things like, you sign up and then you get like, on the homepage, you'll get a notification to sign up as an affiliate. And then we just expected that if we gave you, 10 or 20%, that you would like refer to your friends because it's such a great product. Yeah, none of that happened.
And the promise of affiliate marketing is so sexy. Like, it's like, oh my God. Like, all I have to do is just like, it's not that.
Just sit there and people's going to refer me because I'm so amazing.
There's so many criteria you have to meet in order for affiliate marketing to work. So it can work, obviously. But I to your point, I think the most important thing to realize is it's not a go-to market strategy. Like if you're trying to find your product market fit, it ain't going to work.
Yeah. And I think companies like Dropbox, for example, that were very successful in that, they kind of spoiled the rest of us. They spoiled it for the rest of us, thinking that like we can all be Dropbox. But Dropbox had like millions and millions of dollars. They were an exceptional product, like game-changing product, right? Like not like saving files have never been the same. They're like the Uber of like files like on your desktop, So, and even Uber, right? People are like, well, why don't you just do the thing where it's like Uber where you refer a friend and both people get $20? It's like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, once in a while we get some referrals, but it's not like, it's definitely not like a go-to-market strategy where things like spread very quickly. The seventh thing is that it's okay to not measure everything. And especially with PLG, like a lot of consultants are in this space, also writing a lot of content online. Every playbook was making me feel pretty stupid for not measuring everything and making data-driven decisions. But we didn't have, and we still, I feel like, don't have enough users and customers to make very well-informed data-driven decisions. And we're talking like leading up to 1 million right now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very strongly about this. Like, qualitative data is infinitely more valuable than quantitative data when you're at the beginning. Infinitely more. I mean, especially, it's so easy to tell what you need to do next if you listen in customer support and also talk to your best customers. Like, those two things alone give you more than enough data, although it's qualitative, to make the right decisions.
Yeah, I mean, by listening only to the voice of our customers, we grew 200% in our second year. And of course, like our revenue was low, so it was like easy to grow a lot, but still, right? Like we didn't measure anything. And I think what most people don't understand is even if you measure stuff, you still have to make sense of that data. And that's the part that's hard.
And by the way, the only way you can make sense of the data is if you combine it with qualitative data, right? Because qualitative data will tip you off. And then basically, to me, it's like the other way around. It's like the quantitative data either confirms or, what's the word I'm looking for? Rejects, not the right word, but your theory disproves your theory. Yeah. And besides, you don't have enough data anyway. If you're just starting out, like you're going to make stupid decisions based on based on just too small of a data set. So
yeah, also like, especially in the beginning, you're fighting for resources like within your own team, and integrating something like that and deciphering something like that requires work. Like I think a lot of these platforms like, oh, we're plug and play. Like it's never plug and play.
No, because even if it is plug and play, you then have to really spend time with the data, and you have to spend time figuring out what exactly you want to measure. Like, it takes a lot of time and attention, even with a great, easy to implement, metrics, product metrics platform, to understand, like, how will this inform our roadmap.
Yeah, and I think there is definitely a time where you do need to start measuring some stuff. But it's never like, I think when you hear a consultant say, "Oh, like just test this. You should test everything. Test your pricing page, test your pricing, test your subscriptions." That's really, really hard to do. Like, all of that is dev work.
Yeah, and also, we didn't have enough traffic. We didn't have enough, like, I think it would have led us to potentially lead us to the wrong decisions, where the right decisions were already right in front of us. We just had to listen to our customer.
So the eighth thing is that you can't make everyone happy. I wish I could. So someone once told me that being hyper focused on churn is like leaving your own party where people are having fun to chase after people who weren't having fun.
Such a great metaphor.
It's so good. I heard it from like a customer success leader. It's so good. And everyone's like, "Oh, you need to focus on churn and try to fix churn," but not all churn is fixable, right? So we needed to focus on finding customers who look like our biggest fans, especially in the beginning. Like, there's so many more customers that could sign up that are going to love us, that we didn't need to fix churn yet, right? And at the time, we just had to accept that churned users didn't see our value. And of course, we had like an exit survey form, and a lot of them were like, "Oh, this is too expensive," or like, "I'm not ready," or don't understand the product. And our product is like pretty simple to understand. Like, you upload a video and you launch it. Like, you set a schedule and then people go to it. So if you're like, "Oh, I don't understand," like, yes, like we won't be so delusional to like not think about, hey, is there something that we can improve in our onboarding? But if you have a lot of people that do understand and a few people that don't understand, you shouldn't be spending all your time fixing the onboarding.
Not at first, for sure.
Yeah.
No question.
And if people are like, "Oh, I like, this is too expensive for me," like, you don't go run to them and say, "How about I give you a 50% discount?"
Which is the impulse for a lot of people, I think, right?
I think that was really one of the best advice I ever got from a product marketer, is like, just interview your best people, your top 10 biggest accounts, like filter it in Stripe, the people that are paying you the most money, and ask them all of these questions. By the way, I have a Notion doc with like all my customer interview questions, which I'll also share again in the show notes. And just find more people like them. Ask them where they hang out so that you could go there and promote yourself. But yeah, but I also understand that, like, in the beginning, when you don't have a lot of revenue, when someone leaves, it hurts. Like, it still hurts now because we get a Slack notification when somebody cancels and we're like, "Oh, why'd you cancel?"
It is a mistake to try to please everyone. It is a huge mistake.
And also, like, some churn, when I say like you can't, like, not all churn is fixable, is like, we have so many accounts that pay us a lot of money, like the most. But these are big companies where there's usually an admin that manages our product. And then that admin leaves and no one understands the product. There's no succession plan. And we lost our champion. And so they cancel because no one's using it anymore, or like the content's outdated, or like they just don't even know what this is. Or there has been cases where somebody pays us a lot for 1 year because we were used for a specific launch plan, like inside their company. And there was no way that we could have changed that decision, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing we've learned about our product at bigger companies is that we need a champion, and that puts us at risk, like you said, in some cases, but it's just the reality, and there's no amount of chasing that's going to fix that.
And also because we are a low price point company, like, we are a product led company. So if you are selling a Salesforce, right? Like, someone is paying 200 grand a year for your product. Naturally, there are going to be multiple champions, multiple successors. They really want this. Everything is tied in. But if you're paying like $200-$300 for a product and no one's using it, the impact of killing that is actually not that big. But that's the business we want to be in, right? That's the lifestyle business we want to be in, right? A good lifestyle for us means not having live calls, not having conferences, not having in-person customer success, like not having CS managers. So we chose this life, but it comes with some downsides, which is you don't have CS. Yeah, I mean, you don't have CS managers, so you don't really train the new successor, but for a few $100s, like it's not really worth it. And that leads us to our last and ninth point, which is
related.
Self-service SaaS is the pinnacle of happiness, at least for us.
Yeah.
And for me specifically, before eWebinar, I spent 10 years selling enterprise. Like going to conferences, sitting at booths, I was miserable. So this time around, my third company, I wanted to build a product that could be sold 100% through the internet. So that meant no calls, no in person, and like it doesn't matter who the company is, how big they are. Like I'm not going to take a sales call or a support call. So it's really life-changing now, having experienced this right now, to run a business where people just sign up, convert, and pay monthly without ever having a phone conversation or a Zoom conversation. And revenue, because the amount is so small, like for each customer, revenue takes longer to build. But waking up and having no calls on my calendar is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it means being able to you inherently have boundaries set with your customers. So it doesn't mean you don't listen to them, but you're not at their beck and call in a way that, again, it's a matter of resources. So, if we wanted to like get funding, and I mean, I don't even know, but like if we wanted to somehow like beef up our whole internal infrastructure so we could do these calls, it comes at such a high cost for us in terms of how we want to live our lives that it's not even an option.
Yeah, I mean, my founder friends or even people on LinkedIn are like, you don't do calls? Like, how do you make sales? But none of these companies that sell at our price point does sales calls. Like, you don't see MailChimp like picking up the phone, right? You don't see Calendly picking up the phone. Like, they're just not going to do that. It doesn't make any sense. I don't think it makes sense unless you're selling like, I don't know, like minimum maybe $1,000 a month.
Yeah. Well, and besides, it's the ethos of our product. You know what I mean? It's like you can sell something on demand, without having to talk to someone in person. It can be pre-recorded. It could be automated, the same process, and still be effective.
Yeah. So I guess why this point matters is that all these lessons that we talked about are quite painful to learn, and having to figure things out it just takes a long time. And piecing together little bits of revenue while you have to support a team is really, really difficult. And as your product grows, as users grow, your team also has to grow. But if you get there, you will be in like startup nirvana. So just keep pushing. And that's why this point is important, is like, it really does pay off. And this, like the life that we're living right now, like it just seems so far, when we first started, right? Like, and because like there's always a cost, right? Like I remember when we first started, I was like, oh, if only we had 40K a month, everything will be fine. Right. And then when we got there, I was like, oh man, like we had to hire all these other people. So now if only we had 60K, then everything will be fine. Right. Like it's kind of like a moving target. Yeah. And then it wasn't. And then eventually you make enough concessions and your product grows enough, and that your team is happy enough, and that you feel secure enough that the business actually supports you and you're like, oh, thank God I didn't give up, right? Thank God I didn't switch from product led to sales led. Because that would mean a bigger team, actually. That would mean a bigger team, more support, maybe higher price points, but you're actually spending a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think this is a good place to wrap up. We talked about a lot today, right? Everything from starting with founder-led sales to writing engaging content as a differentiator to self-service SaaS as the pinnacle of happiness. So from everything we've talked about today, what's your hot take?
My hot take goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, which is you don't need to be an expert to build a product-led startup. Like you don't need to have everything figured out. I mean, we figured it out as we went along, mostly because we didn't realize that we had to be product-led. But I think that was kind of a saving grace, because if I knew what I was in for, I might have let it stop me or at least slow me down in starting this company. So I do think that a lot of times like founders need to have this naivety to just like, this delusion to just like push forward, because you're like, oh, this could be easy. Like what I was thinking was like, oh, our product's cheap, everyone will just buy it.
Yeah, never underestimate the power of a little bit of delusion. I mean, I really do believe that. You've got to believe that you could just do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much resource on the internet, and also the market, and just the market and also consumer expectations are just changing so fast that you're never going to be at a point where you know everything. You're still going to have to test things and try things, and some things will work for you but not for me. That's just part of building a startup, is like trying a bunch of things that don't work, but it just kind of moves along anyway.
Yeah. I mean, my sort of hot take is just a slightly different, angle on what you're saying, which is that you need to trust yourself to just solve things as they come up, to have the presence of mind to figure out what's working, what's not working, and to find the resources you need to figure out your blind spots. Like whatever it is, you just have to trust yourself that you can handle things as they come up, and that that also, I guess, requires a little bit of delusion because but it also, to me, I mean, I think that's what life is anyway. I mean, we're all just figuring it out as we go along. At least you can sort of be honest about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have customers that love your product, if you have raving fans and you have a real business, then you can figure it out. There's a way.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Like, I'm always amazed at how people are so afraid to ask questions. I don't know what it is, like fear of being seen as like a dum-dum. But it's like, if there's one thing that I've learned, is that if you don't know something, just ask, like, or go look for an answer. Like I'm just always baffled by that, especially in the age of Google. I'm like, come on.
What do we do before Google? I'm constantly Googling stuff. I think I Google like 30 times a day. Like everything I Google.
I had a friend who wrote a play, and the first line of the play was, "Do you remember remembering?" Because it's like we used to have to remember things, right? Now we don't anymore.
If you've been enjoying this podcast, I've got a small favor to ask. The only way ProfitLed grows is by word of mouth. So if you'll do us a favor and hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening or watching this podcast right now, it'd mean the world to us and help us continue to spend time making these episodes for you. Ping me on LinkedIn if there are particular topics you want us to get into this season. Send me any feedback you have on this podcast, because I love hearing from you. My name is Melissa Kwan, last name spelled Kwan. To get notified of new episodes, join our mailing list by going to ProfitLed.fm. I promise to only share things you'll actually care about. Thanks for listening. Bye now.